like other regulatory health agencies in the world and regulatory agencies in the world, the Ministry of Health in Israel is actively hiding critical information about side effects of the vaccines from the Israeli public. Moreover, the Ministry of Health for the longest time did not really monitor side effects in a very appropriate way and had a very dysfunctional system to monitor side effects of the vaccine. It's important beyond Israel because Israel was essentially the first country to launch the vaccination campaign, the national vaccination campaign, and it did that under a very unique agreement with Pfizer that essentially made Israel a worldwide lab for the rest of the world. And indeed, if you follow all the approval stages of the FDA of the vaccine, in each one of them, Pfizer is quoting and relying on data from Israel, and in fact, in some of them, Israeli officials are presenting to the FDA about, for example, the booster outcomes. Now, what we see here is an internal discussion that was recorded between some senior officials from the Ministry of Health in Israel and a research team that the Ministry of Health itself hired to analyze side effects. Why did they hire this special team? Because only at the end of 2021, a year after vaccination started in Israel, the Ministry of Health finally was able to launch an appropriate system to surveillance side effects and collect reports of side effects from patients. And this is in contrast to what the Ministry of Health was saying publicly, including to the FDA, that they have a very robust system to monitor side effects. So after a year, they were finally able to launch the system, and they basically hire this research team to investigate and study the reports that were received. And what we just heard was part of multiple messages that this research team gave to the Ministry of Health. Here, what they told them is that they were surprised to find out that unlike what was told to the public, and maybe against the existing narrative, many of the side effects are in fact not short-term, but actually last weeks, months, and sometimes over a year. When I say side effects, I talk about menses irregularities, I talk about neurological, serious neurological side effects, and so forth and so forth. And we just heard the head of the research team essentially advising the Ministry of Health officials to think medical legal, because they have a serious problem with potential lawsuits by patients because they communicated to the public in Israel and to the world that the side effects are rare, and if they happen, they don't last for a long period of time. They go away. And that's not what the data is saying. The data is suggesting that in substantial number of cases, these side effects actually last for many, many weeks, months, and over a year. So he's advising them how to communicate, to think carefully, how do they communicate this to the Israeli public? It seems that the Ministry of Health in Israel took this to their attention, because when you look on the actual report that they post in the public domain, they essentially took out a lot of the messages, a lot of the findings that were found by the research team that they hired. And moreover, they misrepresented the data and misrepresented the reporting rates of the different side effects and made them look like very, very rare side effects, whereas the fact of the matter is that the reporting rates were much higher. How did they do that? They did that by doing two things. They basically ignored the fact that the system was only launched at the end of 2021, a year after the vaccination started. So when they considered the number of reports, they took this number and divided it by the total number of doses of vaccine that were given in Israel throughout the entire period of time. That's clearly manipulative, right? The irony is that when they took the number of reports on menses irregularities, they divided it by the number of doses of men and women. I think that everybody could tell, you don't need to be a scientist to know that that's wrong.
Well, I was going to say it's either manipulative or a really, really bad error. Right?
I don't think it's a bad error because even after that was pointed out to them, they never really admitted that there was an error. And they also are hiding from the Israeli public that these reports represent only 15, maybe 17% of the population in Israel. The reason is that the data was collected from, theoretically speaking, from 4 large HMOs, healthcare maintenance organization. That's kind of how the healthcare system in Israel is set up. It's very different than the US. The fact was that only one HMO was primarily reporting. And essentially, these reports are representing only 6 months out of a year and a half, and only 15 to 17% of the population in Israel, rather than the entire population and all the doses that were given in Israel. When you actually look on these true reporting rates, you actually become very concerned that these are actually quite high reporting rates. And that was another thing that the Ministry of Health kind of manipulated, right? And lastly, the research team was essentially talking about clear evidence that these reports, in many cases, demonstrate causal relationship to the vaccine. How did they infer that? They infer that based on a phenomena that is called rechallenge. What does this mean? It means that, say I took 1 dose of the vaccine and had a neurological reaction, and then when I took the 2nd dose of the vaccine, this neurological reaction either came back or became worse. So now I have a situation when every time that I take the vaccine, I see the same response. That is called rechallenge, because the vaccine, every dose of the vaccines is rechallenging the appearance of the side effect. And in which case, it's a common kind of methodology, and we're going to see a video where the head of the research team is explaining that. It's a common methodology to basically conclude there is a causal relationship with the vaccine. Now, this is a system where they actually know the individuals. So the Ministry of Health currently knows that there are people that have clear evidence that they were harmed by the vaccine. So not only that they did not expose the fact that there is an evidence of causal relationship to the public in Israel, they also did not reach out to these individuals to try and compensate them and take care of them, right? So there are many, many failures. And as much as I want to give them the benefit of the doubt that these are maybe innocent errors, it's very hard to believe, given the mounting evidence that there's so many things that were hidden here, that this is something innocent.